So welcome everybody. I'm Nyancho Kajabi, aka Juliet, so CEO of Black Group. And Black's an online presence and has been around for quite some time now, since 2011 online, and we have been propagating and campaigning for citizenship, as you know, for all African descendants across the continent of Africa. Also, not just for that, but also for reparations, and our first reparations would be for us to have for it to be reinstated, as we never gave it up. Okay, I am joined by Sipwe.
Yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me and putting together this this press conference. My name is Sipiwe Baleka. I wear many hats. First and foremost, I am the president of the Balanta Brasa History and Genealogy Society in America, which is an organization for people who take the African ancestry test and discover that their maternal or paternal ancestors are Balanta from Guinea-Bissau. That is an example of what we do in the lineage restoration movement, of which I am a co-founder. Over almost 1 million people have now taken this DNA test and found out specifically who they come from on the African continent, which is a main part of reparations. I serve in other capacities as well. I have served as Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa. I served as head of communications for the Pan-African Federalist Movement. I'm currently serving as a special Afro-descendant special envoy to Burkina Faso. And I was invited to represent Afro-descendants in the African Union's 6th region at the African Commission on Human and People's Rights 85th Ordinary Session to discuss DNA testing, our right of return, citizenship, all as part of African Union's theme of the year 2025. Thank you.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. My name is Dauda Balde, a senior journalist at the Party Network, which is one of the Gambia's leading online platform. We have over 1 million of followers and millions of views on all our social media handles. And I've been reporting on the Afro-Descendants campaign on citizenship here in the Gambia and across for the past years. It has been my passion to ensure that this campaign is successful. And then here again, I am glad to be in the midst of great people like you to further strengthen this campaign and also get deeper understanding on the issue of Afro-descendants. And like having you here, Mr. Baleka, is really great. Despite the busy schedule, you endeavor to be with us here to discuss. And Juliet is our sister. We've been working together on Black Seed for the past few years. And I'm looking forward to a very interesting session here with our colleagues in the Gambia.
Mr. Barr, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
You getting me? This is Esaba. I work for West Coast Radio on the Coffee Time with Peter Gomez, a flagship radio news program in the Gambia, with a very wide reach, with let's say thousands and thousands of listeners every weekday. I've reported about African descendants, of course, in the past. Sometime last year or earlier this year, when they hosted a press conference. And I am really glad to join you all here. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, first question, please. As you know, the theme, as I've sent out, which was written by Sipway, was will the AU conference, decade of reparations and sorry, the AU Commission and the AU conference, what does it mean to us? That basically in short terms, because I want us to really get into the heart of it, and how is it going to be beneficial to us?
That's a great question that has many layers. Now, on the one hand, the African Union does represent the highest form of formal organization of African people. It is an intergovernmental association of 54 or 55 member states. As such, it has no sovereign power to do anything. It does provide a forum where African heads of states and their government officials can come together and debate policy and issues and come up with strategies and frameworks. But ultimately, whatever decisions are made by the African Union are left to the implementation individually by each member states. The fact that the AU designated 2025 as the year of justice for African and people of African descent through reparations is important because it's the first time that at this highest level, reparations, which then includes issues like repatriation and citizenship, is a major or central focus for discussion. So in that sense, it's important to all African people, those at home and those abroad. Now, in another sense, we know that 70% of the African Union's funding comes from foreigners. And we know that the African Union has failed on so many fronts to provide solutions for African people and Africa's problems. So based on the track record, what can we expect in terms of real tangible results regarding reparations is not very optimistic by a lot of us who've been in this space for a long time. So ultimately, it's up to African people to struggle in all arenas, including the arena of the African Union, including the arena of the domestic government and domestic civil society in African states, including the arenas of the diaspora communities in the governments that they happen to fall under, if we're going to get to a point where there's a comprehensive Afro-descendant citizenship policy that recognizes our unqualified right to return. Hopefully that answered your question.
That certainly does. Thank you. Now, over to the journalists. I'm sure that you've got questions specifically about Gambia and where we are with regard to the citizenship process here. So, fire ahead.
Okay.
I have a question. And as you recently highlighted in the 85th ordinary session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights that I was following, countries you did say that countries like Guinea-Bissau have made huge steps in the Afro-descendants' rights. Back in the Gambia here, we have made strides, of course, in the past, but has it been enough? What would you want to see more from the Gambia in this aspect?
Absolutely.
I mean, we're both going to agree and say absolutely yes. But I mean, from my perspective, I'll just briefly say absolutely yes. I'm wholly disappointed since I had a since I had a meeting, I had an audience with the president, also had an audience with the National Assembly, etc., and have met many people here of influence and power, hoping to push the envelope, hoping that we are going to make some progress, especially given Gambia's very special relationship with, let's say, repatriation and citizenship because of its connection to Kunte Kinte and Alex Haley, etc., in terms of its historical value. And of course, because it previously was one of the first pioneers to have and give African citizenship, Gambian citizenship specifically to diasporans and let's say African descendants or Afro descendants, whatever you want to call us, I don't mind, right? Because it was then in the 1967, I believe, in Abuja by the late great Sir Dawda Jawara, and then also followed by Yahya Jammeh at the annual Roots Festival. It was then given to us, and then we seem to have come to a halt. So we've gone from first place to seemingly almost last place. So my saying is that this needs to be a top priority for Gambia, firstly because of the importance on the world stage. Secondly, the importance with regards to reparations, because that is the first step of reparation, is the restitution of our rights as citizens. And also, it's very, very important in light of what's happening in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, and I'm sure that Simpwe will talk on those other things. But for us, campaigning here on the ground is an absolute priority, one that, like I said, seems to have been neglected since 2022 to date.
Thank you very much. I have more questions, but I would allow my colleagues to go first and before coming on with my next question. Thank you so much.
Sipwe?
Thank you very much. I have a question to ask.
Sipwe, are you ready? I can't see you. Okay, go ahead.
This question partly will be answered by Sipwe and then Juliet. Particularly Juliet, we've been in the forefront to ensure that this automatic citizenship campaign is realized in the Gambia, which is considered, and historically it is the origin of the famous Kunta Kinte and Alex Haley. But in the previous regime, during Jawara's regime, hopes were very high that African descendants will be welcomed back home. And this homecoming campaign has been spread across Africa, and in the Gambia, in 2022, Black Sis makes start by having one-on-one audience with His Excellency President Adama Barrow, which renewed hope and commitment to ensure that African descendants are given the opportunity to where they belong, because Gambia is the home of Kunta Kinte and Alex Haley. These are great people whose history will remain forever. First, are you a bit disappointed that the government that has been for far too long claiming to be Pan-Africanist, to be supporting African issues, and especially our African brothers and sisters whose ancestors were forcefully taken away from us, and now they're coming back home, but then they have been restricted by colonial rules that are still existing in the country? That is your question. Then I will ask the question.
Oh, holy. I'm holy. I mean, there is no other words to describe the fact that I feel as though there has been a huge lack of engagement, a huge lack of follow through, a huge lack of action. Despite so many efforts on many fronts, not just by myself, but by others. And this is not something that has been happening today. This is not just myself, this is others. So, I think that there has to be steps made, and I'm hoping this press conference will start an engagement. I have recently been told by a great journalist called Dawda that we will be meeting up with hopefully the Deputy Speaker, Honourable Sidi, and I'm hoping that this meeting, will give us the opportunity to push forward with this agenda swiftly. and to engage on a constructive and progressive basis where we can actually see progress and results, active, real results. That's what we need, not just a talk shop, but results. You know, I want to see my passport in my hand. Okay, not 15 years. We should be made an exception. And this has been shown. We did not give up our citizenship. You know, it was forced, you know, out of our hands of our ancestors. It was stripped out of the hands of our ancestors. It was forcibly taken in ethnocide and genocide. So, yes, I think that we ought to, you know, definitely push this on the front burner and as an action point. Now on to you, Sipwe.
Okay, so
and hello, brother. How are you? Yes.
Disappointment would be an understatement, given the fact that we are talking about the damage from a declared war that began 573. So what I'm saying is that from the very first ancestor that was captured as a prisoner of this declared war and trafficked from their family, from their homeland, across the Atlantic, and enslaved in the Americas, prayers to God have been reaching up to heaven that we could return home. So in 2001, the World Conference Against Racism in Durban, South Africa, declared our experience to be a crime against humanity. Not only a crime, arguably, because of its brutality and the duration, the greatest crime against humanity. So to say that all these unanswered prayers for almost a millennium, more than half a millennium, have not been answered, to say that I'm disappointed doesn't capture the weight of all the souls that died and never returned to their ancestral homeland. Disappointment is not even close. And this is what fuels my passion to champion this movement, because we are talking about ma'at. We are talking about justice. And I was born at a time and in a community where we were told no justice, no peace. I want to live in a peaceful world ruled by law, not by military might. And that cannot happen until justice is restored. And given what I just said, the number one agenda item for the entire world is the justice due to the victims of the greatest crime against humanity, which begins with recognizing our right to return and granting us citizenship. And it's correct, Gambia has a special place to play, because it was because of Alex Haley and Roots and Kunta Kinte that most of us learned for the first time, one, what actually happened, and two, gave us hope that we could actually find our villages. Now, Alex Haley has done it. I have done it. And this is why I talk so much about the DNA testing, particularly and specifically only that provided by African ancestry, because one, it allows us to do what Alex Haley did. And two, and maybe I'll talk about this more when other questions come up, it provides from a legal perspective an unimpeachable legal claim that is based on international law, particularly the 1841 Amistad case, as well as the Geneva Convention. And so this is what we are bringing to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. And this is what we want to bring to all governments, especially the government of Gambia, and say, this is not something you're doing because of moral sentiment, which is great. It's not something you're doing, you know, there's a moral component, an economic component, a spiritual component, but you are legally obligated at least to those people who are descendant from people of Gambian origin, you're legally obligated. Let me land there.
Okay, I just want to welcome Brother Eugene Telford. Can you make yourself known? Hello, are you on camera?
Yes, I'm here. Welcome everyone, and good morning and good afternoon. I'm Brother Eugene Telford. I am a member of the Black Panther Party here in the United States. I am also the Minister of Economics with the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa, which was created by the Honorable Malcolm X back in 1964 to give African Americans an initiative to move forward with our own government outside of the Babylonian government in which we live in. I'm also the chairperson for the New Africa Network television and media broadcast, which is based out of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And we are an underground Black Power network, which allows African people to voice their opinion, to discuss things that are very important and close and dear to our hearts without limitation. These things are very necessary as we're moving forward as a people of self-determination. And as we are working to bridge the gap between the Africans in the diaspora with Africans on the continent, we're certainly here to tear down barriers of conflicts of interest that Africans don't have culture in the United States, and Africans on the mother continent don't like Africans in the diaspora. And so we're tearing down these lies as a political front. Definitely, we have a long way to go as what we need to do to destroy some of the mechanisms that our former slave masters and colonizers had worked so very hard over the centuries to put in place to divide us. And therefore, it is up to us as a independent people, self-determined people, to carve out a new narrative that had put before us, and making sure that we pave the way for the next generation to have an easier path. Everyone comes into life to struggle, whether you're on this side of the Atlantic or the other side of the Atlantic in Africa. We all have been bitten by the same dog, and especially since I've last checked, everyone has that one common enemy, which happens to be here we say the Babylonian Europeans, Arabs, and some Asian groups who have worked hard to enslave us and to continue to keep us enslaved. They no longer have to put chains on our wrists and ankles, but a lot of the chains have been indoctrinated into us over the centuries, and those chains exist on our minds. And as we are what our enemies call being woke now, this has definitely become a problem for them, carving out paths, ways to where we can unify ourselves. Many of us are now taking our pilgrimages back to Africa and getting reconnected to our ancestral lineage through what Brother Sipaway has said, through the DNA process. And as we are learning who we are as a people, we're also understanding that many of the lies that have been told over the centuries had become a big burden for many of us worldwide. So I'm continuing to look forward to engage in these conversations, both here on the front line in the United States, to make sure that our brothers and sisters are aware of what's happening in the African Union, but also looking at bridging the gap between our cultural differences. And although we share many cultural aspects to our struggle, certainly we know that we come from a common ancestor would link us in a positive mode, and we look forward to continuing our freedom fight for liberty and justice for all. And I'll yield the mic here. That Black Power.
Thank you so much. That was great.
If there is no question, I would like to ask, actively involved in making sure that Afro descendants are given citizenship. Recently, you were in Guinea-Bissau and also in Cameroon, where so through your efforts, some of the African Afro-descendants were given citizenship. So, are there any plans, despite your busy schedule, for you to visit the Gambia and then meet with authorities to facilitate this great movement to ensure that Afro-descendants here in the Gambia and those willing to come will be given the automatic citizenship instead of having to wait for 15 years, which is the constitutional requirement?
Okay, so as you know, I'm your neighbor here in Guinea-Bissau, so it's not that difficult for me to get to Gambia. I am available to go anywhere in Africa on this mission. Let me shout out to the Balanta Student Association that met with me the last time I was in Gambia. So it's possible. What we are doing, you asked me if there's plans. The general plan is because of the legal narrative in the legal case, what we have found is when we identify, organize, and centralize the Afro-descendants of a particular origin within a country, and then we petition the government, that is what is working. That is how we got the citizenships here in Guinea-Bissau, and this is what we're doing now in other countries, like you mentioned, Cameroon, Sierra Leone, Burkina Faso. So while we champion the fact that all African countries need to grant citizenship to all Afro-descendants, regardless of whether or not they can show DNA testing evidence or proof of where they come from, given where we are today in the political environment, we are finding that when the government realizes, I'll use the case of Guinea-Bissau for example, that we're talking about Guinea-Bissau providing citizenship for people of Guinean origin, their own people. So I would like to come to Gambia working with people who have taken the DNA test that show that they are of Gambian origin from whichever tribes, show them the model that we've been using that's been successful and help them use that in Gambia.
I'd like to add that I was fortunate enough that my grandma told me that I was from Gambia. So I wasn't so far away from that. Do you see what I mean? And so when a composite DNA test was done by my family, obviously Gambia came up. But we were told, and there are many of us that are told, especially from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, we know where we're from in the Caribbean because our grandparents told us. And, you know, you should also know the apple by its tree. And so I think that, you know, they also have to take an approach where it's not compulsory also, because I think some people are also can be deterred by the process. I'm not saying that it's a bad process. In fact, I think it's a good process for many people to trace their roots who don't know their roots. And it gives them that, you know, connection that they never had. And they could never have had without it.
You and I had that discussion, right? Again, I agree with you. It shouldn't be compulsory. But the real politics, the geopolitical reality of most of these governments, they're not giving you the citizenship. This is why you said you're disappointed. You want them to do better. And so the argument that they can't get around is when those people who are actually from the territories now claimed by Gambia, when those people come forward with irrefutable proof and say, we have the right to return, when that is granted, that opens the door for all Afro-descendants because to require records and proof when that was part of the crime, to make sure we didn't have them, is to re-victimize us. So I'm on your side. Yes, it should not be compulsory, but we know politically that the way to get there is you got to get them to recognize the right of return of their own people. And then those people make the case that, hey, look, right, as more and more of these governments are doing that, the Pan-African spirit of Ubuntu, Pan-Africanism itself says, even though we are from these different tribes, and yes, from a reparations and a spiritual point of view, we want to know where we come from, our own vine and fig tree. Politically, the future of our destiny is one African citizenship for all African people.
Yes.
And so it's a stepping stone. First, you got to get the Afro descendants using their right of return. Then you got to get rid of the borders or have a united African states with a common African citizenship that then says, well, we already are giving citizenship to Afro descendants. We know that they were taken from here. Now that we've got one citizenship for the continent, now we are at a point where we can give it to all African people, those at home and those abroad. Now, the question is like you said, we don't want to wait 15 years. We definitely don't want to wait till 2063. So we're trying to expedite this process. I want the Gambia to start 2026 by following Benin and creating legislation that simply says, if you have a sub-Saharan ancestor that was enslaved, you have the right to citizenship. In Benin, it costs $100 and the process takes 3 months. So I want the Gambia to become a Pan-African leader in this and be the next state, even if they do it before Guinea-Bissau. I want all of them to do it at the start of what is this second decade of people of African descent, according to the United Nations, and according to this new decade of reparations by the African Union. Everyone should follow Benin's example and get it done in 2026.
One nation, one Africa. Thank you, Blacksit family. Please keep watching and remember, follow your dreams.
Purchase your tracks today. Purchase your tracks today.